You're listening to MMA Think Tank with Jay and Mike.
Welcome to the MMA Think Tank podcast. I'm your host, Jay.
This is your other host, Mike.
Yeah, and we're here talking about, we're going to be recapping shows as well as getting into some mixed martial arts news. There's a lot of that in the news corner. And we'll have a We Pick 'em round where we pick the fights. And then we will have our Fighter of the Month at the end of this episode. I don't know who Mike is picking, and he doesn't know who I am picking. But let's go ahead and get into it, Mike. We've got, let's recap some shows. Just about a week ago, we had Bellator 153. Let's go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, guys, and just so you know, when we do the recap for next week, we're going to have 3 shows because at the end of this episode, we've got 3 shows that we're picking. So they'll go a little faster than today probably, or a little longer. But today's today. So let's talk about Andrei Koreshkov. Man, he showed up to fight, didn't he, Jay?
Yes, he did. He did show up to fight. And unfortunately for our boy Ben Henderson, it wasn't a good time for him. That's for sure.
Yeah, you know, I looked at the fight in a couple different ways. I think there is no doubt that Benson Henderson is, you know, he's not as big as he should be for that division, though he's got a couple of wins in the UFC at welterweight and some good wins. Not over any big stars, but, you know, when he beat Thatch, the guy was, you know, way bigger than he was. He was able to get the finish. But I just didn't see Henderson, in my opinion, really mixing it up in his fights. In this fight, he wasn't really going for takedowns early on. He was just kind of staying on his feet. And I think if you're fighting a bigger, stronger guy who is a striker, mind you, if you don't try and mix it up and you're the smaller guy, I don't know. I just thought that was a bad decision on his part.
Well, watching him fight, I thought that he was trying to take him down several times, and it just wasn't working out. Maybe he didn't do it early enough, like you said. But I don't know, man. Koreshkov looks like the real deal. He looks pretty tough.
For sure.
I definitely underestimated him when I picked Henderson to win, but I also know you picked Henderson to win. I don't know if that was all just based on following what you wanted to believe or you know, in your boy, Ben Henderson, and or how much of it was you thought Ben would have the skills to beat Koreshkov.
No, I thought he would be able to beat Koreshkov, but if you guys remember out there, I said don't sleep on Koreshkov. He's the real deal. You know, this guy was no joke. I think it was 18-1 coming in, only lost to Ben Askren, which is no slouch, obviously, to the hardcores out there that know Ben Askren. But I still thought that he would be able to get it done, Jay, because of he seems more well-rounded. He can take a punch. I thought it would kind of end the way it did with Thatch. I thought he would get the rear naked choke maybe in the 4th. He would, you know, just get to the end of the championship rounds and get it done. But that was my thought on it.
Yeah, I also thought he would have the tools to get it done. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and Koreshkov ends up winning that decision. It was really pretty impressive, though. I don't want to, you know, take anything away. Koreshkov he's legit. He's the real deal. I think that man has a potential. He could probably beat a lot of guys in the top 10 at the UFC.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just amazing. What do you think's next for Ben Henderson?
It seems like Scott Coker keeps talking about the lightweight division for him. Not saying he has to fight there, but there's better matchups. And there's great matchups in the lightweight division. That's why I thought it was smart that he fought in the welterweight division, because there wasn't as many guys there that he would have to fight. And you could go get that 3rd title quickly and you know, have a different weight class title, you know, to go along with his lightweight title. But the lightweight division is much more tougher, as Jay, as you know, you're a big Will Brooks fan, and I'm a fan of Will Brooks as well. He's the champ. You got Michael Chandler. You got a guy in Josh Thompson that he beat, you know, according to, you know, the logbook, if you want to call it that. But many people thought Thompson beat him. And you've got other guys, you know, I'm sure I'm missing right now in the lightweight division. They're just great guys. So I really like to see him fight in the lightweight division as well. And then if he gets that title or looks great, then he can always come back. He's still young enough to come back and fight in the welterweight division.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I think Coker's onto the right thing. I think maybe that weight class is just too big for him. We'll see how he does. I'm sure he'll go into the lightweight division and test the waters there as well. He's got a big contract with them, so he will definitely be with Bellator in some weight division. So I think 155 will be right for him.
The question I have for you too is, and this is something I don't think we've even discussed off the show, is has he trained enough to build his body to a welterweight? George St. Pierre's always talked about if he goes up, he's going to take a year off. He's going to, build it the right way. And I don't think that Ben has done that. I think he's just kind of, I don't mean he's trying to do it off the cuff, meaning he's not taking things seriously, but he hasn't taken that year off to build his body up.
No, he hasn't taken that year off. And I don't believe he's really taken that seriously about moving up to that weight class in terms of getting his body prepared anyway.
Yeah.
Or maybe he thinks that he doesn't need to. I don't know. But one thing is for sure, he didn't have a good outing. And I know it's against Koreshkov. And I don't know. We'll see where he goes from here. But what's next for Koreshkov? I mean, where do you go from here? You just beat one of the best guys coming in from the UFC. And, I mean, what do you do now in Bellator?
I think you favorite over your Bellator or if you're Koreshkov?
Oh, Koreshkov, both. I mean, what do you do?
Well, if you're Koreshkov, you probably highlight or like the tweet that Dana White probably put out with a smiley face whenever a former UFC fighter leaves and loses in his first match. But then after that, my guess is he's going to fight Paul Daly if Paul Daly gets past Josh Koscheck, and we'll talk about that later on with the News Corner. So there's a little tease for you guys, I guess, because they're both heavy hands. They're both great fighters. I think that Koreshkov will beat Daly.
I do
but
too.
That's what I think is next.
Yeah, I definitely do too. But that's my point. Like, there's nobody else in that division, in that organization, that I think gives him a run for his money. So I think it's kind of sucks for him, to be honest, and for Bellator.
Well, I guess we can look at Koscheck, who really hasn't been doing well as of late. I'm pretty sure he's lost his last 4 or 5. I think it's 5.
Oh yeah,
coming in, but he's a wrestler, so we can see what maybe he can do with getting Koreshkov down if that's at all possible. I don't know, but he's been doing. Just because you got taken down by Ben Askren doesn't mean you stink at wrestling defense. That's just he's just so good at it. Well, so it's tough to tell.
Well, his last win was a split decision win against Mike Pierce way back in February of 2012. So Josh Koscheck I don't think is the answer.
Yeah.
And you're definitely right. He's lost his last 5 since 2012, by the way.
Yeah.
And not looking good for him. So I think Daly gets past Koscheck pretty easily. So I don't know what happens next with Koreshkov. Let's go ahead and move on from this fight because there's nothing more to talk about other than Koreshkov is for real. He beat Ben Henderson, and I wish the best of luck to Ben.
Yeah, me too. I think it's come back strong. He usually doesn't lose 2 in a row or look horrible in his next fight after a loss. So I think he'll be all right.
Yeah, I hope not. Anything else you want to recap on this fight card?
On the fight card, yeah. I mean the Pitbull fight. Was Pitbull was back. People, not that he really left for too long, but he submitted Henry Corrales second round. Corrales was kind of a fill-in fight. I think it was John Teixeira who was pulled out of had to pull out. It's a couple weeks ago now, guys, so it's kind of foggy in my brain a little bit. But look, man, he still finished the guy in the second round. He had just lost his title to Daniel Strauss. The guy has, I believe, only 3 losses in his 20-plus fights. And this guy is Mr. Bellator. And when I say Mr. Bellator, I mean, if you think of who the best fighter is in Bellator of all time currently in a young promotion, it's got to be this Pitbull, Patricio. And I think he's going to fight Strauss next or within the next couple fights, depending on what happens with Strauss and that whole featherweight division.
I don't know why when you said Mr. Bellator, for some reason Mr. Belvedere popped into my head. A lot of you young folks
I decided to kind of backtrack a little bit and explain what I was saying.
Yeah,
so,
a lot of the young folks won't know what that is, but it was an old TV show anyway, and it was terrible.
Alfred from Batman, only fat.
Yeah, it was terrible. But that's what popped into my head. So, you're right. Pitbull is a good fighter. He's been a great fighter for Bellator for some years now. And, he's one of their legends, so to speak, if I had to call it something. He's got that status with Bellator. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he'll stay with Bellator for the rest of his career.
I agree.
And, good for him with that submission win, big time win. But what's next for him? I mean, where do you think he's going to go now? Do you think he's ever going to get that belt?
It's Strauss probably, if assuming they get that together. That's what he wants. That's what Strauss had talked a little bit about. I don't think he should fight Strauss just right now after getting one win, after losing his title. No. They've already fought 3 times, Yep. So there's no reason for another one quite yet. But Bellator doesn't, they don't always do the standard thing. They go for whatever matchups is going to please the fans, which, I applaud them for that. But sometimes I want to have a little bit more of the sport aspect to it and let guys earn their shots. Now Pitbull obviously has earned it faster based off his resume compared to some guy. Let's just say, let's go over to Michael Page real quick, who was on the card. Michael Page, he won, beat Jeremy Holloway, another fill-in guy. But look, Michael Page is now 10-0. Man. All finishes except for one where he was dominant against Nashon Burrell, I think is who it was. But he was dominant in that fight. The guy's 10-0. Got a toehold on Jeremy Holloway, so that should tell you really where Jeremy Holloway's game is compared to Michael Page. Michael Page is undefeated. The other guy we were thinking about too in the welterweight division was Brennan Ward, both big prospects. But Evangelista Santos, he showed Brennan Ward that, hey man, the wily veteran can get it done against the younger guy. When Santos beat Ward, I know both you and I think the whole world picked Brennan Ward to win that fight, but he was submitted by a heel hook in the first round. So, those are the other fights I would talk about, Jay. What did you think about those?
I think a couple of things I found out on both these fights. One, I think one guy we probably overestimated. We thought maybe was better than he actually is, I would say. Possibly Brennan Ward. And the other guy is just as good as we thought, and that would be Michael Page. I think Michael Page looked awesome, very dominant in his fight. That toe hold was hilarious, by the way. I love the way he looked down at the guy like, I got you now. Yeah. And got him. And then with Brennan Ward, it was just all so odd looking. Like when he got caught, I couldn't believe that he tapped to that, like that it was over,
Yeah, there's something I say a lot. If you're in the big leagues and you tap to a toe hold, an arm bar, excuse me, not an arm bar, a knee bar, a leg lock, unless you're like Husamar Palhares or someone like Damian Maia or these jiu-jitsu wizards that are just that good, you shouldn't be where you're at, or you need to learn a little bit just based off all the MMA I have watched,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Maybe. Who knows? Maybe Santos has been working with Palhares because it looked pretty crazy. I don't know. Brennan Ward, though, I don't think he's quite where I thought he was in my mind. I think my opinion has changed of him a bit.
Yeah, I will agree with you on that, but I want to actually just kind of add something to the conversation to go a little farther with that as well, which is I agree with you about Brennan Ward in that we put a little bit too much stock into him. He did lose some fights at middleweight, and then has been looking great at welterweight in Bellator, and when he fought in Risen for those that one fight. But he still hadn't really fought a dangerous veteran, and he finally did in Santos. Yeah. And the same thing with Michael Page. Now, see, Michael Page hasn't really fought a big-time veteran either, so Brennan Ward just fought a veteran. Let's see what happens when Michael Page fights a veteran. However, I also agree with you, Jay, in the fact that Michael Page is the Michael Page we've seen. He'll be that Michael Page and probably beat that veteran. Do you think that as well, Jay?
Yeah, I definitely think that. I think Michael Page is legit, but I do want to see him face some tougher competition. That's for sure. So that's a good point you bring up, and we will see that soon. I'm sure he's going to fight better competition. The fight with Brennan Ward now, I still look forward to that, to be honest, just because Brennan, he's been around. He's a decent fighter, but I'm not as excited as I was about that fight. So
yeah, I still find him to be an exciting fighter. He gets a lot of wins by KO. He knows what he's doing. It's just that hey, maybe he shouldn't be fighting for the title now for another year or something like that.
Yeah,
that's how I see it.
All right, Mike. Also, we had UFC 197. Let's go ahead and recap that card.
Yeah.
Of course, everybody knows John Jones versus Ovin St. Preux. And what did you think about that fight, Mike?
For me, it was one of those fights that was kind of a letdown until I really sat down and looked at it. And just like, I saw that John Jones just won the whole fight the whole way through. I didn't see the killer instinct that I expected to see. He was out for a long time, obviously, from being in jail and all that kind of stuff like that. But then, it was a mix of things too, Jays. We found out, OSP had a broken arm in there a little bit, I think in the second or third. But then Jones also hurt his foot there as well. He was in a wheelchair at the end of the fight, getting checked out and stuff like that. Didn't go to the hospital or anything. So there's a lot of stuff that went on, I guess, that we weren't privy to in the beginning. Like in a lot of mixed martial arts fights, we wonder why some guys don't do as well. So I wouldn't mind seeing that fight again at some point when it's earned. But I would like to have still seen Jones finish that fight. He had chances to finish that fight. All I remember is one big punch by OSP. Mm-hmm. So
I definitely agree wholeheartedly. I think that there was plenty of times Jones could have put Ovens away. But here's the thing. I called this fight, and yes, I was dead wrong. I said that he would just crush OSP in the first round. Didn't happen. Everybody's seen it.
I thought it was going to be in the second or third, man. So don't feel.
But the problem is, I didn't see a killer instinct in him at all throughout the whole fight, and there was times where I thought that he could have easily put him away, and OSP was in danger so many times, and I was thinking to myself, wow, lesser opponents could have put this guy away already. It didn't make sense to me. It didn't look like the John Jones we were used to seeing. And I know they commented on that as well. DC even said that if that John Jones were to show up against him, he would beat him. And I agree. I think he would have beat John Jones that night. The way John Jones looked, he was getting tagged. He got hit a few times, not by very hard shots, but Ovens got him a few times where I thought that John Jones should have never let him hit him. But we're just seeing a different John Jones, and I hope that's due to ring rust. It could possibly be, but if it's something else, something serious mentally or maybe even physically, they were possibly saying that because he's gained more muscle mass.
The powerlifting is what Greg Jackson was saying, and then I think he denied it, but you could hear it plainly.
But we don't know. We don't know what goes on through these fighters' heads or what's going on with them. But I'll chalk it up to ring rust right now for me personally, because I still think Jones is one of the best ever. So we'll see what happens in his next fight against DC, and we'll talk about that fight soon.
Yeah, to me, it's ring rust and just one of those eggs that a fighter is going to lay once in a while. I'm a huge Matt Hughes fan, but one of his defenses. I forget the guy's name right now, but he's a Brazilian guy. This is before the UFC got really big. But look, man, he won 3 rounds and just almost quote, laid and prayed on him. And it was just a horrible fight. And sometimes these guys are going to have it. We're just not used to seeing it with Jones, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's what really took it for me, is that we're not used to seeing this kind of fighter in Jones. OSP, though, I have to give him some credit. He did get a broken arm in the second round. So for him to fight through it like that, kudos to him. But still, even on his side, that killer instinct wasn't there. This is your one big shot to go for it all. And in the first round, you did really nothing. Yeah. It was pretty shocking to me.
Yeah, so, good call on that one, too. Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty shocking. Anyway, we already know what's next for John Jones, and we will be talking about that. So... Which jail is he going into, Jay? He's not going to jail, Mike.
Oh, sorry, I jumped the gun.
No,
sorry.
Unless DC's arms are his jail. I don't know.
Yes, exactly.
Anyway, so also on this card, Mike, who else did we have here? We
got Mighty Mouse Johnson, Demetrius Johnson versus Henry Cejudo.
How could I forget? Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike. Talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, so if you haven't heard the podcast before, me and Jay, we have a not really ongoing discussion, but really over the last few shows, because it's getting closer and closer to who really is the rightful number 1 pound-for-pound fighter. I still lean towards John Jones, though I'm starting to see the light a little bit towards Demetrius Johnson. And, Jay has been a staunch Demetrius Johnson fan from the beginning and believes he's the number 1 pound-for-pound. So, just to get that out there. But I said if he beats Henry Cejudo, and not to say that Jay is going to disagree with this, but I said if he beats Henry Cejudo, there's no one left in the division for Demetrius Johnson. And boy, howdy, if he didn't beat Henry Cejudo, beat him at his own game, this gold medal wrestler he beat, and in less than 2 minutes. I mean,
crazy.
It's like Demetrius Johnson had to pee, man. He's like, I got to get this done quick. I got to go. I got things to do. And I don't know. It was brilliant. I watched it like 3 times over the last week just to see how amazing it was. The guy's unbeatable. Yeah,
as did I. I watched it several times back to back that night. And I have to say, I think maybe he was hurrying to go and play his PlayStation or something, because he's a big time video game fan, guys. I follow him over on Twitch too. You can find him there. And the guy he's a down to earth guy. He's a great guy. He loves his video games though. So maybe he was hurrying to try to get to it. But man, was that crazy. I thought that Cejudo was going to give him much more problems, man. I really thought that Cejudo was going to take him down. I don't think that he would have been kept down, but I think that I thought that he would have taken him down several times before this fight was over. I was wrong. I mean, those brutal knees to his liver, and that really just ended it. It was the knees and the strikes after the knees. It was just unbelievable. Great performance.
For me, within the first 30 seconds, I think Cejudo was able to take him down, but he wasn't able to hold him down for very long. But when he did take him down, I kind of clapped my hands just to say, okay, here we go. Let's see what's going to happen.
I thought we'd see more of that. Yeah, I thought we'd see more and more of that.
Yeah, and he couldn't hold him down. And then, they got in the clinch, like you said. And even though, he's not a Greco-Roman wrestler, Cejudo, he's a freestyle wrestler, still, that would be more his world, you would think, as a gold medal wrestler. Yeah. Wrestling the best of the world. And it's true that MMA wrestling against, standard wrestling or, that kind of thing is different. You look at George St. Pierre, never, wrestled collegiately or anything like that. And there's different setups. There's different things that go on. We all know that. But even so, that was just strength and finesse in the clinch with the knees and the elbows. And he just, poor Cejudo didn't know it was coming at any point.
Yeah, and it's not only his speed that Demetrius has, it's his precision, his accuracy with his striking that is just unbelievably good, and why I think that he's pound for pound the best. Mm-hmm. And he represents all facets of mixed martial arts. He does everything good. That's the thing about him. He's a jack of all trades. He does everything good. And great in some respects. It's crazy how great this guy is. I mean, I'm very high on Demetrius Johnson, and I think I will be, even if he went up to the 135 division. I think he'll give a lot of guys a run for their money in there. And here's the thing. Demetrius has come out and said, yes, he wants to beat the record. So he wants to stay at 125.
The title defense record.
The title defense record, yes. But he doesn't want to say that he wouldn't go after a title shot against Cruz. He's open to that anyway. And that is pretty cool. If he did something like that, went up and tried to get the belt there, man, I'm all for it.
And that's a rematch that's worth a watch. I mean, they fought in WEC when there was no flyweight title. And Cruz really just, not to take anything away from Cruz, but it was one of those real things that was, look, he's the bigger guy. Yeah. And Mighty Mouse fought valiantly, but Cruz was able just to get that win. And he got that win, in my opinion, because of the takedowns, as opposed to like the strikes and stuff like that. I had never seen Cruz take anybody down until the fight with Demetrius Johnson, because usually he was having no problem. He won't have any problems on the feet. He's sticking and moving and picking people apart, winning on the scorecards. First time I ever saw him take somebody down was Demetrius Johnson. I don't know where Demetrius Johnson goes here. I'm just going to let it ride.
I think that Demetrius Johnson is a totally different fighter than he was back then. I think for sure. I think he has grown by leaps and bounds. I think this guy could. Honestly, I say he would beat Cruz, and I'm confident in that. I don't think it would be like wipe the floor with him win, but I think that he would beat him probably by decision, but I think he would win.
I need to see how Cruz looks against Faber. And because that size, I think, still could be something. But there's no doubt that they're different fighters now, especially Demetrius. I mean, look, the draw that Demetrius Johnson had against Ian McCall, he wipes the floor. And he beat McCall the next time. He wipes the floor with McCall. That's the only other guy I think that he hasn't. He has a non-loss or non-win against or whatever.
All you have to do is look at how he progressed against just John Dodson.
Yeah.
From their first fight to their second. I mean, he destroyed Dodson, where in their first fight, it was very close.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much this guy is growing. And he's, 29 years old?
Yeah. And listen to what Henry Cejudo said at the press conference. Well, I'm not going to play it, but I'll just tell you if you didn't see it. He goes, man, I want to see that guy at bantamweight. I want to see what he can do. He didn't say, oh, I need to go back. I can beat this guy if I retool this or if I do that. No, he was in awe of the guy. He was like, man, I do want to see him at 135. That would be great.
Yeah. And kudos to Cejudo for being such a great sport,
Yeah.
I do like that guy a lot. So I definitely want to see him come back and I can't say come back and win that belt because I don't think he ever will if Demetrius has anything to say about it.
Yeah. Jay, if you don't mind, if we move on so I can toot my horn on this next one. I get fights right. I get them wrong. We all do that, but rarely do I pick it exactly the way I think it's going to happen. And it happened with Edson Barboza and Anthony Pettis. I really sternly thought that Barboza was going to come out with his kicks, with his striking, and never have to worry about the fight. Not finish the fight, though, and that's what happened against Anthony Pettis. Yep. He beat Pettis. Two judges gave Pettis one of the rounds, but one judge gave Barboza all the rounds. And from beginning to end, Barboza was just striking and winning, and he was never in trouble, whereas Pettis' leg was busted up and purple, the inside of his left leg, I believe, but it was one of his legs. Edson Barboza is now playing around again with the wins to losses. Is he still a contender? Is he not a contender? But we can discuss that. But for sure, Anthony Pettis now is 0-3 in his last 3 fights.
Yeah. You know what? I won't say I was a big fan of Anthony Pettis. I never was a big fan. But I was a fan. I thought he was a great fighter. I think he's becoming irrelevant. I really do. His last 3 fights, losing them the way he did. And mind you, this was a decision loss, but still it was a big decision loss. To me, Edson won all 5 rounds. To me, that's the way I saw it. Edson Barboza is one of those guys who's always up and down, up and down. So I can't really gauge this fight on where he's at because I really don't know where Anthony's at. I think mentally, I think he's broken. There's something going on with Anthony Pettis where he's not the same Anthony Pettis he was a few fights ago. He has. It's almost like there's no killer instinct there. I don't know if that's what it is. Because, he's throwing punches and kicks. It's not like he's not doing anything. But he just got demolished by a guy who's been on an up and down streak, just kind of just floating. And I really wasn't very high on Barboza in his last few fights. And now I'm supposed to think he's the next big thing because he beat Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis, I think, was the real problem in this fight.
Well, see, that's why I brought up, Edson Barboza's up, he's down. Is he a contender? Is he not? But Pettis is the big deal of what happens with him next. And I want to add on to what you said in your synopsis of Pettis. When he is losing, he looks lost out there. Not that he doesn't know how to do things, but he doesn't know what to do. Mm-hmm. To me, kind of just to go back to the Benson Henderson fight, I think Pettis should have early went in and mixed it up instead of throwing strikes. Now Pettis did start trying to clinch up or try and get a takedown in the second round, late in the second, but by then it's too late. With Pettis, he also went to Jackson's and trained a little bit. So it's not like he can change camps. It's not like, unless he wants to change camps fully, I guess. He's already made some changes. There's nothing really left to change, in my opinion, unless you want to go different weight classes. But man, 0-3, I'd never. If you gave me a list of fighters that would go 0-3, especially after losing their belt. Now we know the lightweight division is probably the best division out there. That are the welterweights in the UFC at least. I wouldn't expect him to go 0-3.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. But if you go back over his record and the people that he's fought, aside from guys like Donald Cerrone and Benson Henderson, We've had guys that me and you had mixed feelings on in the past. Jeremy Stevens, Gilbert Melendez, Joe Lozon. Guys that are decent, but maybe we were putting Pettis too high. Maybe we thought that he was better than we thought he was.
And that's funny you say that, Jay, because we've never thought he was as good as most people thought.
Yeah.
We knew he was good.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, so I think it's a case of that a little bit, but it's also, it's very strange that he's just doing so horribly bad lately. I don't know. I think there's a mental thing there. I really do. You can't take that lightly. Sometimes people go through things, and losses can give you this mental issue as well with some fighters, and I think that's what's going through his mind. I don't know.
I think you're right. I think the only other thing that to me that's a discussion point is that he is 0-3, but it is against three of the top guys, that he's fought, in the division. Barboza maybe wasn't necessarily top 5. He might be top 10. But, you've got – before that he fought Alvarez, and Alvarez is now fighting for the title. Mm-hmm. And then he just lost his title to Dos Anjos. So he's fighting some good guys. But, yeah, we'll certainly see, man.
Yeah. Well, anybody else you want to talk about on that card?
Not too much, but we'll just kind of like give the remainder of the main card. Robert Whitaker defeated Rafael Natal by unanimous decision. It was, it was just a cut and dry case. Yair Rodriguez defeated Andre Fili. I'm a big Andre Fili fan, young guy from Team Alpha Male. Man, Yair Rodriguez did a really great head kick on him, though.
That was wasn't it a flying knee?
I thought it was a knee, but it ended up being like the shin, kind of the shin part. So maybe, I don't know if it's a shin kick or whatever.
Either way, it was beautiful.
I know when I looked it up earlier, it said head kick, and I was like, head kick? And then I was, because you think of like, the foot hitting the head as opposed to shin. But anyway, so it was more of a shin kick. But Rodriguez, obviously one of those young up-and-comers that is going to be doing stuff. Look, Feely still is great as well. He's just, maybe there's a little Brennan Ward action there. We put a little bit too much into him, possibly, but still a great fighter.
Yeah.
When I look at you look at like the prelims, I didn't really jot down anything for the prelims with the exception of Carla Esparza and Juliana Lima. Esparza, the former strawweight champ, she got back in the winning cards now with a defeat over Juliana Lima. So that's all I have, though.
Yeah. Decision win over her. Basically, she took her down a lot and did much of nothing. Carla did what Carla does best, take people down. Yeah. And that's good. That's good for her. But I don't know. It doesn't show me anything yet because the way she fought, if she tried to fight like that against the top two girls in that division right now, I think she'd get creamed.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Sergio Pettis, though. He won his fight against Chris Calades.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if they're going to start pushing him because, he's not undefeated in the UFC, but he's got a couple of wins in. I think for sure in a row. I think
he took his brother's mojo.
That's what it's funny. I was thinking the same thing. It's like, is there only so much mojo in that family to go around? And so
maybe, but
I don't know. They like the Super Twins or the Wonder Twins or whatever.
Or maybe it's just time for Anthony to start cornering his brother. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. That's way too soon for that, Anthony.
In all seriousness, too, though. I agree. I think it's funny. I make jokes obviously all the time as well, but I'm really excited to see who they're going to give Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis.
Yeah.
I'm excited who Anthony Johnson gets as well.
Yeah,
but,
me too.
Pettis. I mean, they've got to give him. Who do they give him now? Actually, let's backtrack.
Who do you give him now? I mean, you got to go way down on the list, to be honest. And I'm not talking about guys just coming into the UFC. I'm talking about guys that have been hanging around the UFC quite a while. Maybe they're towards the end of their career. Maybe you give him one of those guys.
You want to? Well, the name that popped into my head since Barboza is in the top 10, but I don't believe he's in the top 5. Is maybe a rematch against Clay Guida. Clay Guida, he's a lot older now. He does have that wrestling, game, but it gives him a reason to fight, to get a win back, so to speak. And maybe you give him that because Clay Guida is not the same fighter he was than when he beat him back then. He's not the same fighter that he's been lately. So maybe that's a good way to do it. That's what I would say. But I certainly wouldn't give him Jeremy Stevens because Jeremy Stevens, even though he's
been looking
won a couple
good.
Losses, he's looked better. So I wouldn't give him Stevens either.
Yeah. Either of those two would work for me, but I think Guida would be the right track. It would also be something where he can get back his win from him,
That's what I was saying. Yeah, exactly.
So, let's go ahead and move on from this card, and let's get into some news, Mike.
News Corner.
What do you have for us in the way of news this week?
Bellator MMA, I should say, is just making some really big moves. Not necessarily in signing people right now, as of late, but just in their cards. Fresh off the really paltry, kind of horrible, Italian card they had a couple weeks ago. They're going to their second international card with Bellator 158 in London on July 16th. But this time they're really bringing some names and some good people. Now, I say names and good people because I don't really think Kimbo Slice and James Thompson are great fighters. However, for some reason, they are going to be the main event. And so they did fight in 2008 in Elite XC where Kimbo Slice knocked him out and exploded Thompson's ear. If you guys remember,
I remember that.
He had the stuff just the cauliflower ear. And he just popped it open. Anyway, Slice won that fight back in 2008, but man, that was almost 10 years ago. So who knows? Both these guys are just journeyman guys now.
Wow.
And then Josh Koscheck versus Paul Daly 2 rematch. So it's going to be the Bellator debut for Koscheck. If you guys remember, their first fight was UFC 113 back in 2010, I think. Koscheck just held him down, was in his ear the whole time, in Daly's ear the whole time, and then when they got up at the end of the fight, Daly sucker punched him, and the UFC tossed him, and that's when he went to when Daly went to Strikeforce, did his duties there.
Yep.
So yeah, Koscheck, we talked about, he's lost 5 in a row. He's 17-10 overall, 5 KOs, 5 submissions. Just not the guy he used to be.
Interesting about that fight when they fought and he sucker punched him. That was the only time I ever rooted for Koscheck.
Yeah.
Honestly, that was the only time. So I do remember.
He's a hothead, and look, I think we all know that it's not just because he's a name, but it's also his John. It's also his talking that he does. Paul Daly's 38-13-2. 38 wins, 13 losses, 2 draws. Got 28 KOs. I mean, like he's 4-0, I think, in Bellator. 9-1 since leaving Strikeforce. The guy, could he fight in the UFC for still? Yeah, but it's a good fight. I think he's going to beat Koscheck.
Me too.
The last fight on there that they dropped, and of course we'll discuss. Michael Page is fighting Fernando Gonzalez as well. So you got Slice and Thompson 2 is the main event. Co-main event, Josh Koscheck, Paul Daly 2, and one other fight right now is going to be Michael Page and Fernando Gonzalez.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Michael Page fight. Out of all those fights, that's the one I'm looking forward to. The rest of them, I could really care less. It's MMA, that's great, but Kimbo has no business in MMA. I really don't like him in the sport. Unless they get Dada 5000, I'm not happy. Dada 5000 needs to make this card.
Yeah, I don't know why he doesn't. They don't sign him for a few more fights.
Yeah.
James Thompson, though, I mean, he's on the card not just because he fought Kimbo Slice, but he's British as well. And so I guess they thought, well, why don't we just Kimbo sells fights, so we'll put him against him. When I was looking up, because I don't know Fernando Gonzalez very much, so I had to look him up. Gonzalez is 25-13 with 9 TKOs, 7 submissions. A surprising thing here, I think I heard Jimmy Smith say it on one of the broadcasts. He's 5-0 in Bellator, and that's a 5 fight win streak. So he's beaten some guys in Bellator. So this is a guy that could pose some problems for Michael Page. I'm still going to pick Michael Page hands down.
Yeah.
But this is not a guy like Jeremy Holloway or a guy that is just kind of coming in that has some losses in Bellator or hasn't fought in Bellator. Gonzalez has cut his teeth in Bellator. And he's got some names too. When I was reading it, I think it was Zaromskis, Marius Zaromskis, and a few other people. Nobody great anymore, but at least guys I can say, oh, I've seen them fight.
Yep. Yep. Mike, I got a question to ask you.
Yeah.
How are you enjoying Tough 23?
I'm enjoying it.
Okay.
There's sometimes Tough 23 is sometimes Tough is kind of boring. Sometimes it's great. This is good. I like the coaches. I like both the coaches. And you know what? There's already been some good one-liners on there from Jędrzejczyk, and the demeanor of Gadelia. She's holding it together, but man, so far so good.
Yeah, a couple of things about this season. One, I just read today that unfortunately it's not doing very well in the ratings.
Oh, really?
Apparently this Tough has gotten some of the worst ratings yet. I don't know if that's due to the coaches or what's going on here, or if Tough is just losing steam altogether. But it's not looking that great for this season. But in terms of enjoyability, entertainment value, I think it's great. I'm really enjoying this season. Besides all the craziness between Jędrzejczyk and Claudia, I think that the fights are good so far from what we've seen. Just to get into the house, they've been good. So I don't know. And I'll also add that Claudia is somebody that I wasn't too familiar with outside of fighting. So I'm actually starting to like her as well. I think she's pretty likable. So is Joanna, but I will say Joanna seems kind of like a bully on these past 2 episodes that we've watched.
And that's what she does with every opponent, like it or love it or hate it. It's what she does. I'm a fan of Claudia Gadelia. I've liked her before, but this is going to be, I'll like her more simply because I get to see more of her. Yeah. I've seen her demeanor. She speaks English very well.
Very well.
Which a lot of Brazilians don't. A lot don't speak English. A lot of American fighters don't speak Portuguese. So I'm not trying to say you have to learn it, but if you do learn English, then you get promoted a lot more and stuff like that. And so I'm a big fan of her on the show, and I'm glad that I get to actually understand her, which is better. So
unless you're Anderson Silva, then you get promoted.
Well, regardless. I guess you have to be like the former pound for pound best, I guess.
Exactly.
Now, I just want to say, too, that I don't know if this is if Joanna, her pushing Claudia is going to be in her best interest, though, because even though it was a close fight, I still think Claudia won that first fight. Although, look, Joanna, decked her and sent her to the canvas, and I think in the first round or whichever round it was. But I don't know if it's going to work out this way. I'm just so excited for this fight. So even though I'm fine watching the fighters in the house and the fighters fighting actually, in the octagon on the show, this is really for me a big lead up to their fight.
Of course, and I think what Joanna is trying to do in this season is she's trying to play head games with Claudia. Obviously, she's not a bully in real life. I think she just wants to try to bully Claudia, and she just wants to get her mentally unstable when they do fight. I think she wants to rattle her a bit. And so far, I see that she's rattling her, but not in the way that she wants her to be rattled. I think she's just pissing her off, pretty much.
Well, I think some of it, too, I don't know if you've noticed this, and this is, I could be wrong on this. It's just something that I feel I've seen. Some of the time, it looks like Joanna she's forcing it. And there's no reason you don't need to force it just because it's on the show. Just let it come out. Because I've seen countdown shows and stuff where she just will not leave her opponent alone. Call it Esparza before their fight. Man, all the background stuff we never got to see in the countdown shows and stuff like that they show on UFC, not UFC Tonight, but whatever the other show is that's not the interviews and stuff. UFC Ultimate Insider, that's the title of the show. The background there was just, man, what she put Esparza through was pretty rough. Yeah.
Well, I think like I said, it's a mental game she's playing. What else do you got for us?
Well, I just want to say it's really interesting to see UFC on Good Morning America, something I never thought I would see in my lifetime as a longtime fan. They were on Good Morning America. I should say, well, not they. I'll just say Dana White, Chuck Liddell, Paige Van Zandt, Daniel Cormier, John Jones, and Frankie Edgar. And if I'm leaving anybody out, I apologize. But they were there just for the announcement of the new UFC 200 main event with Conor McGregor holding out or not being able to fight. We'll get into that in a second. But that was crazy. I never thought I'd see that. And they in GMA embraced MMA, which I never thought would happen.
Yeah, poor Frankie, though. You left him last, and Frankie didn't even get to talk during that interview. They all got questions. except for him. So thank you to Michael Strahan for that.
Yeah.
Dogging on our boy, Frankie. But it was kind of odd. I saw you write up on Facebook. And by the way, guys, go ahead and visit our Facebook at MMA Think Tank. Mike's always putting out articles, but that article you put out, and you said that they were going to be on Good Morning America, and I was like, what? I said that shouldn't even be put in the same sentence,
Right.
UFC and GMA. It just did not sound right. And honestly, when I watched it, it did not look right either. It was very, you could tell they were uncomfortable. They were very uncomfortable being on that stage.
Sorry, Bruce Buffer, when he's like, welcome to GMA.
Yeah.
In this corner, we have, it's like, what?
Yeah, it was hokey. It was odd. It was very out of place. But hey, you know what? They were on the center stage. They were out there pushing MMA. Yep. And guess what? They might have got a lot more fans because of it.
Yeah, and they had a good lead in also with Paige Van Zandt being on Dancing with the Stars. So people who know Paige Van Zandt from Dancing with the Stars know she's a UFC fighter. They're going to watch GMA, see, oh, that's Paige Van Zandt. Oh, maybe I'll, watch these other people fight. Who knows?
Yeah.
But,
Yep. Well, if she can dance, she could fight, I guess. I don't know. That's what people are watching her for, I guess. Anyway, Mike, UFC 200 press conference. I found out something interesting about this press conference. Did you know that Conor McGregor was brought up during this conference?
Quite a bit. Do you have a specific number?
Yes, I do.
Share?
I
Okay,
actually,
you did, yeah.
53 times he was brought up.
Do you know out of how many questions?
I do not know that, but I know 53 times his name was uttered.
Well, I'll tell you this. It was got to be close to half the conference, the first conference they did before they officially kicked Conor off of 200, the very first one a week or two ago. They talked about him a lot. And even in this most recent one that they did in New York right after the GMA, they talked about him as well.
Yeah.
So
that's how much of a polarizing figure Conor is and how much he brings to the UFC. Okay. And I think we should talk a bit about Conor McGregor and the situation that's been going on. So a couple of weeks ago, Conor McGregor refused to go to this UFC 200 press conference because he was training in Iceland. And at the time, I think he just flew out there maybe the day before this press conference, and he was told, hey, go ahead, or it might have been 2 days before, but he was told by Dana White, hey, you need to come here tomorrow. We're going to have a press conference, blah, blah, blah. And Conor basically said, no, I'm training. I can't be bothered right now. So I guess they went back and forth a bit, but in the end, it seemed that Conor just didn't show. So because of this, of course, Dana White pulled him from the UFC 200 card, and that was all well and good, I guess, until what happened last Sunday. There was a tweet sent out, and you sent it to me, and I think this tweet said something like,
the long tweet, the really long one.
I think it was the one that said that Conor had tweeted out that he was happy to announce that he was back on UFC 200, and he thanked Dana White.
Dana Lorenzo.
Yeah. And so, of course, looking at that, we're like, this can't really be a game because he's got their Twitter handles and he's saying it to them as well and his fans. So he's back on the card. That's what we all assumed. Well, we assumed wrong because apparently Dana the next morning said, I don't know what Conor's talking about. He ain't on that card. So
yeah, I think he said, I don't know if he's retired or not. That's up to him, but I know he's not on the card.
Yeah,
because he retired.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's something I forgot. He did retire the night when he was pulled from the card. He initially said, "Okay," I sent out a tweet and basically said, "I retire" or whatnot. He retired for a day. It was just all insane. And the news media picked it up and ran with it like crazy when he announced his retirement. I mean, even ESPN, who's not big fans of mixed martial arts, they were talking about it a lot. And that just goes to show you how much Conor pushes the UFC and mixed martial arts. He is a big, big draw. And now, today, I don't know if you saw it, Mike, but today,
yeah, I did.
I saw Conor, it wasn't a tweet, but I guess he wrote on his Facebook that nobody gives an F about these other fights until this one is settled. Cut the BS, run it back, #real fight. And he had a short video of his fight with Diaz. Now,
he's on Instagram.
It was on Instagram as well as his Facebook, by the way. Now here, I got a bunch to say about this, Mike. Like,
well, I do too.
I'm a huge fan, of Conor McGregor, both inside and outside of the cage. I like his shtick and his antics and what goes on. He sells fights. I get it. But then there comes a point where you're just sort of delusional, okay? And yes, I'm talking about Conor. He's sort of delusional in that he thinks that just because he's a big draw, that he's bigger than the UFC. He is not bigger than the UFC. The UFC can survive without him. Sure, he'd bring them a lot of money, but you know what? They don't need him. They don't need him. Now, if he were to go somewhere else, sure, he'd make them some money too. But where would that put him?
They couldn't afford him.
Even if they could, go ahead, Conor, go. Look, I like him. I want to see him fight in the UFC still, and I think he will. I'm not saying he's not going to. I think Dana and Conor, they're smarter than that. He's going to be fighting soon for them again. But this whole thing where he's so delusional that he's saying that nobody gives an F about these fights at UFC 200. Mike, what did they just announce? What was the big main event at UFC 200 that they announced?
It's a fight that I think everybody wants to see, and that is John Jones versus Daniel Cormier, the rematch, to see who's the undisputed champ. And do you mind if I take over for
go
a little
ahead.
bit here?
Go ahead.
I'll let you finish if you got more stuff. I don't want to step on you.
No, go ahead. Take over.
Okay, so I'm a little bit opposite of Jay in how I view Conor McGregor. I'm not a fan of him personally. I think he's a great fighter. I thought his brand was crushed a little bit when he lost to Nate Diaz. And to see him now talking about everybody wants to see this fight. No, Conor, a lot of people do, and I will watch it if it's on. But UFC 200 has some great fights on it that if you didn't fight Diaz, oh well, I'll catch it again some other time. But I'm still excited for UFC 200. The guy cares more about himself. If you guys have heard us from the beginning, I don't like him because he's in it for the money, which is fine, doesn't mean everybody else is. So when people say, I don't care about fighting Conor McGregor, you want to fight me, I'm the money fight, blah, blah, blah. No, maybe people just want to provide for their family and get the belt. Now, there's some people who do want that money fight, and I don't disagree with those people who want it, but not everybody's like that. He talks too much, and then after the UFC, Zuffa, the who owns the UFC, Dana White, the Fertitta brothers, they've handled this immaculately for me personally, nothing but respect. They said, look, we want you to come here to do this press conference. Everybody's doing it, and we need you to come do it. Everybody else showed up. People came in from Poland, from Brazil when they didn't need to. DC, Daniel Cormier even said, look, I didn't want to come to this thing, but I had to because it's my job, and sometimes you got to do it. He said, I feel for Conor McGregor because he does do more, way more, maybe twice as much as we do for promotions. And here's why I want to just jump back on Conor McGregor's side for a little bit, because I don't think it's all one-sided. And I'm sure Jay doesn't think that either. Obviously, you just listen to it. But listen to him talk. He does do way too much stuff. But he should have came out for that big thing with everybody else and then decided, you know what? Let's talk about this. And then if he wanted to pull out of the fight, then he could have pulled out of the fight. But there's no way that the UFC is going to not keep Conor McGregor in the fold. They don't need him, but he's going to fight at 2001, 2, or 3, or so on, if Conor McGregor wants to fight. And then when he came out with this whole thing, like Jay brought up about people want to see the Diaz fight, nah, man, a little too much. I'm kind of going around in circles because there's so much has happened since over the last 2 weeks. But he has some good points, Jay. He does, as we've discussed in the past. But it comes down to you can't go public against your boss.
Yeah,
and that's what he did. And they don't need him, just like they didn't. People were wondering. I wrote on Facebook, what's going to happen when Chuck Liddell retires? What happens if Ronda Rousey loses? What GSP? He's near the end of his career. He's a big draw. Oh, they lost Lesnar. Lesnar's not there anymore. He's a big draw. Oh, they keep rolling, and they'll continue to keep rolling.
Yeah. Here's the thing about it. Him coming out and saying this about the the UFC. This is what kind of really turned me off, is when he talked about that nobody else or nobody cares about these other fights. You know what? Look, yes, I would have loved to see him fight Diaz again, but would I rather watch that fight than DC versus Jones? No. Would I rather watched any other of the fights on that card over his fight with Diaz at 170? Yes, I would have, because he got demolished against Diaz in the second round. I mean, the way Diaz took every punch he gave it back to him tenfold, knocked him silly to the point where he was going for a takedown against a guy you don't go for a takedown against, right, especially when you're rocked. It was just ridiculous. And for him to say that that's what people want to see, no, nobody wants to see you get crushed again by Nate Diaz. Because honestly, I think he gets whooped again by Nate Diaz at 170 pounds. I'd say at 155 pounds, he might get beat by Nate Diaz. But
that's because Nate Diaz has a chin like no other, and McGregor doesn't grapple. So I guess what I want to say too, just really quick, is that to me this shows the true nature, or more of the true nature, of Conor McGregor, in that he does hype fights, but a lot of it he's like I've said, I don't like him because he's all about, I don't want to say he's all about him, because at some point we have to, it has to be about us, whether it's because we need to take care of ourselves or our family or whatever. But it's all about him, and he's become so big that he's lost the conception of what, who he is and what he means to the sport and to fans. And, that's going to happen when you're a big star. And the UFC made this bratty little child.
Yep.
They're the parents that made this bratty little child. But the parents, the UFC, they did the right thing when they said, okay, you can't go to the party.
Yeah.
That's how you're going to be. You're not going to go to the party. You can go to other parties later on, but you can't go to this party because of the way you're acting. And they're treating him like, to quote former UFC champ, and I'm sure soon to be UFC Hall of Famer, Rich Franklin, they're treating him like a child. And that's the best way I could say it. He summed it up at my views exactly. And it's all up to McGregor.
But here's the thing. He acted out like a child.
Yeah.
And it goes both ways with the promotion and Conor. And the fact that, this whole thing about him being bigger than the UFC and how, the other fighters, or he promotes more than the other fighters do. Okay. Look, they all have the same amount of press conferences. Yes, he gets the bulk of the questions. He gets the bulk of the answers. He gives the bulk of the answers. I understand he sells fights and he promotes more than they do. But the fact is, they all have to be at the same place at the same time. It's not like they're doing something special for Conor, making him do certain things that the others don't have to do. So here's the thing. We all don't like some aspects of our job, but we have to do them or else we get fired. And that's basically what's happening here. Although he's not getting fired, he's just getting spanked. And I think that he does push a good issue out there, saying, look, maybe we should look at it as, fighters, or the promotion should look at us and see that we need more time to train, less time in the media, less time going to these morning shows that have no idea what mixed martial arts even is.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up.
I understand that. I understand that. And that makes a lot of sense. But I don't think that social media is the platform to bring that up to your bosses. I think that should be brought up on a more private level. I don't think you bring that up to your fans.
I think you bring that up after UFC 200.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
Yeah.
You bring it up after UFC 200. It's like I wrote on Facebook about the fact that, DC says we all got to do this. And what I left out on Facebook is that two things. One, Dana was willing to fly him fly Conor to the press conference, private jet with all his equipment, so he can train right before and right after, on the plane or wherever, I don't know, but he's going to fly all that stuff, make stipulations for him. And there was a great thing he did for DC for this latest press conference. They said, DC, we need you to be at this press conference. And he goes, man, I really don't want to go because my son, I forget what he called it, Jay, but he had a really big solo and he sings or something like that in school or something like that. I guess he's really great at it. He goes, I want to be there for my son, And they said, look, it's really important, but how about we do this? How about we send a camera crew to his school or wherever, and we'll beam it straight to a TV room. Here, you can watch it. You can talk to him. They did that for the heavyweight champion of the UFC. The UFC, they make allowances. They maybe don't bend over backwards, but they bend. And I think that Conor McGregor, though he has some good points, is not bending enough. He needs to get in here and he needs to fight at 2001 or later. At least I was I was hoping a lot that he was just going to come out and say, you and me and the UFC, we mended some bridges. They heard me, we heard each other, and I'm going to fight. And that's what Dana White does as well. As soon as things are good, he never gets into the weeds of, well, we gave him quite a bit, but blah, blah, blah. No, it's always very even-handed and respectful. You know why? Because they're businessmen, and they know what they've got in Conor McGregor. Yeah.
No, they definitely know what they have. He brings a lot to the UFC, but he's not bigger than UFC, and he never will be. For people to say that, it's just ridiculous. But that aside, who I feel most sorry for is Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz lost a money fight. He truly did. That would have been a big payday for Nate Diaz, and he missed that boat.
He doesn't seem too sad, man. He certainly did lose a lot of money. There's no denying that. But he's ready to go on vacation. He might be on vacation right now, he said. And all he wanted to do was fight Conor McGregor. So who knows what Nate Diaz is doing now, if he's in Hawaii or if he's in Modesto. I don't know. But
well, you know what? Maybe we should move on from this. We got a lot more to talk about. But yeah. So, I mean, your thoughts is pretty much the same. I mean, he'll never be bigger than the UFC. And, he should just mind his P's and Q's a bit. I think he's over talking when it comes to this.
And let me just say, too, that, I got, at least angry for me a little bit on this whole subject. I respect Conor McGregor. I think he's a fantastic fighter. If I got to meet the man, I'd love to meet the man, talk to the man. But I think this time, having gone through this sport so much with Tito Ortiz holding out, and then, even my boy Randy Couture dealing with his things, trying to retire, but yet still fight in another promotion. I've gone through so many of these things that I've seen what happens, and people need to look at history and see what happens with the UFC, even though Conor McGregor is by far, makes way more money. So anyway, I just want to clear it up that I don't hate the guy. It's something I'm very, very, it's a very big deal to me.
Well, UFC 200, we've got the main event, and it's going to be a great one. Jones versus DC. And I just hope that the old Jones shows up to this fight, because DC will tear him up if it's this new Jones.
Yeah, UFC 197 was not a good prelim, so to speak, for that fight.
Yeah. Okay. So what else do you have for us for news, Mike?
Well, real quick though, I'll just make a quick pick on that. I'm still gonna pick Jones until we get closer to seeing stuff. So
yeah, me too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just speaking of fights that are coming up soon, I think a pretty good fight. Max Holloway. Jay and I really like Max Holloway. He's fighting Ricardo Lamas at UFC 199.
Who's he fighting?
This guy named Ricardo Lamas. He's a featherweight that actually he's got a pretty good record, but he doesn't beat many good guys. That's his problem.
Oh, okay. I never heard of this guy.
Yeah, somehow, some way he got
Is he
fight
ranked?
against Jose Aldo.
Is he ranked?
He's also lost to Mendez. But if you ask me outside of Diego Sanchez, who he just beat, I couldn't tell you who he's beat.
Who is he ranked?
Yeah, he's like number 5.
I'm just kidding, guys. We know who Ricardo Lamas is.
If you listen to the podcast, you know we're messing around.
I almost said Lorenzo Lamas. Totally different guy. But Ricardo, yes. This guy. He's
sorry, he was 16-4. I apologize. Let me just finish this quickly. He's 16-4. 4 TKO KOs, 4 subs, 7-2 in the UFC. Losses to Aldo and Mendez. Just beat Diego Sanchez like I thought. But guys, seriously, off the top of my head, I can't remember any of the names he's beaten, if they mean anything. So he's one of those types of guys that beats, he's in the top 10, but it's only because he beats everybody except for the big names. Holloway's 15-3. Guy's on a 8-fight win streak, man, since losing to Conor McGregor. 6 TKO KOs, 2 subs, and it's 11-3 in the UFC.
Holloway has to be above him in the top 5, right?
I don't think he is quite yet.
Well,
I think. Remember, Holloway just kind of got in there the last couple times.
Yeah, well, hopefully I think this is where Holloway steps in and takes top 5 from him.
Yeah. I'll see if I can take a look for it real quick.
Because
what happens here.
Yeah, that's just craziness. I think Ricardo Lamas is one of the most overrated fighters in the game, and I say that respectfully, okay? Because he's a fighter. He could beat me up, no problem. But I ain't in the fight game, and I when I look at his record, I scratch my head. It's like I call it the Gilbert Melendez effect. It's like, you put guys on this pedestal all the time, and then you find out later on, they're not what we thought,
Yeah.
Same thing with Gilbert.
Ricardo Lamas is number 5, and Holloway is now number 4. I forgot how long this streak has been for Holloway.
Okay.
So he's ranked number 4. Lamas is number 5.
Okay. I thought he would have to be.
But this would be the first real guy, I think, that, real big name, I think that Holloway will have beaten that's a ranked guy, if you really think about it.
He had a great fight against Conor McGregor.
Yeah, and he got a win against Stevens, and Stevens has been looking good lately. But I can't think of looking right now, just really quickly, featherweight division. Champ McGregor, and then Aldo, Edgar, Mendez, Holloway, Lamas, Cub Swanson, Oliveira, Bermudez, Stevens. That's basically your top 10. So I can't think of anybody that Holloway has beaten really in that big top 10, with the exception of Stevens. Maybe I think he beat Oliveira actually though. So he deserves to be there. I'm just so used to the featherweight division being more stacked than I think it is.
That could be. We'll see what happens. But I'd pick Holloway in that fight all day.
I'm picking him hands down. And again, no disrespect against Ricardo Lamas, even though we make fun of him. It's just a fun thing to do, and he could beat us both up probably with one hand together.
Yeah, probably.
But it's just one of those things. Like, until I see this guy get a really big name win, he's just going to be that guy that's kind of like the Matt Brown, who we'll talk about later on today, who is a great fighter but just doesn't have that signature win yet.
Yeah. All right, what else you got for us, Mike?
Not much left, but we got a couple things left. Joanna Calderwood from Tough, obviously. Yes. She's going to fight Valerie Letourneau at Fight Night 89 in Canada on June 18th. Now, this is remember, if you guys remember, Letourneau just lost to Yana Jędrzejczyk by decision. Most of us didn't think she really deserved the shot outside of her streak, because someone's got to fight the champ. And she did go to decision with Jędrzejczyk, which, good for her. Letourneau's 8-4 for TKO, KOs, 1 sub, 3-1 the UFC, but hasn't fought a lot of great people, as we just said in her lead up to Jędrzejczyk. And Calderwood's 10-1 with 4 KO, TKOs, 2-1 in the UFC. She just rebounded after the armbar loss to Marina Moroz, with a win over Courtney Casey, I believe her name is. No, her last name is Casey. I think it's Courtney Casey. So she's got back in the win column. I don't know who to pick in this fight. I'm leaning towards Joanna Calderwood. This is actually there's a big to-do about this. This is going to be the first flyweight
I was going to bring that up.
In the women's divisions. So let's see what happens with this. Hopefully it goes well. They open up a division, assuming they can find enough exciting contenders. And I'd like to see it. Yeah,
and of course this is a big move for both Letourneau and Calderwood to go down to 125, or up to 125. Yeah. Sorry, but it's more. I think it's more fitting for Calderwood because she's a taller girl. I think that this is probably going to be a better weight class for her, for sure.
Yeah, and when she fought Moroz, I'm a big fan of hers, and Moroz was she wasn't unknown, but she hadn't fought as many great people as Calderwood had. So I think that was an eye-opener for Calderwood. So I expect to see some bigger and better things from Calderwood. So I guess I'll lean towards Calderwood in this one. But other than that, I'm just excited to see the UFC opening another weight class. I don't think they should get too crazy now. I mean, after 135.
It's... Well, for me, I would have rather seen 140-pound division, women's division anyway, and seen Cyborg and the rest of those 140 girls brought over instead of the 125. Because, to be honest, I don't know too many women at 125. I don't know where this is going to lead.
Yeah, it's just an Invicta class, really. And at least with the 145ers, you've got the people that could come over from Invicta also with
That's what I meant, 145ers. Excuse me.
Yeah, with
what
do you call it? With Cyborg
exactly.
fighting in a couple weeks. It is at 140. That might be what kind of
yeah,
a little bit.
Exactly.
But we'll see what happens, man. But you're not going to go much past 145, because women in general are smaller. So I mean, you're not going to see a heavyweight division. So it depends on how many.
Yeah, that is the heavyweight. That is basically the heavyweight division for women's fighting. 145. Yeah. That's usually what you see anyway. Mike, what else do you got?
Last thing we got, and I'm excited about this fight. Derek Lewis has been calling out Roy Nelson for a while now, not in a disrespectful way, but in a respectful way. He wants another big name win, veteran on his belt. He wants to fight Roy Nelson because the fans will love it, and he thinks obviously he can beat him. So Derek, the Black Beast Lewis, Roy Big Country Nelson fighting now at Fight Night 90 as the co-main event, which is going to be, I think, a fantastic fight. We'll really see with both guys where they're at. Roy Nelson had lost three in a row and just had a horrible fight, though he got the win against Jared Rolshaw. We discussed that, Jay, if you remember.
Yeah.
That was horrible. Derek Lewis, he looks pretty legit, 6-2 in the UFC right now. Just destroyed Gabriel Gonzaga. Now, look, Gonzaga is not, a top 10 guy, but look, he was a former title challenger, a really good, well-rounded guy with submissions and KOs in his UFC career. So Nelson really is the next step up for Lewis. And if Lewis beats Nelson, Nelson is ranked number 10 or 9. He'll be in that top 10 in a couple more fights. I'm sure he fights for the title.
Well, here's the thing about Derek Lewis. If he gets past Roy Nelson and Roy Nelson's chin, and this is a big test for him. If he knocks out Roy Nelson, I will be impressed. And I say he's on his way to go after that title. Roy Nelson, he's got a great chin, but man, like you've said, the guy seems like he's just coming in to collect paychecks now.
Yeah, I wrote that on the on the Facebook. Yeah, yep. Thanks for bringing that up. That's one of the things I was going to bring up too. When I do the Facebook and I do the podcast, sometimes I forget what I've done for which. But yeah, that's all he's doing.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like the old Roy Nelson that we've come to know and love in the UFC. At least some of us, anyway. I know a lot of people hate him, but
he's only been knocked out once. Now it's by Mark Hunt, but Mark Hunt,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's got a chin, man. If Derek Lewis can do it, I'd be pretty impressed. And look where Mark Hunt is today, even at his age. He's doing very well in the UFC.
Something that oh, sorry, Jay, go ahead.
I know. So I'm excited to see Derek Lewis again.
Yeah, and for all you guys out there, now I could be wrong, obviously, but if you're thinking, well, Big Country, he does have the jiu-jitsu that they always talk about and blah, blah.
That he never uses it. Yeah, I was going to say that. He never uses it. It's like...
he would be primed to use it for this guy.
Yeah, I know. I remember one time he got, I believe it was on The Ultimate Fighter, he got Kimbo Slice down.
It's Kimbo Slice in the crucifix, or close to it.
Yeah. And he just kind of tapped him in the head a few times. Yeah, that was hilarious. But that's the last time I've seen that man take anybody down.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Email us. Call us. So you guys are stupid. I remember when this happened.
Yeah,
something like that. And we'll certainly get back to you.
Yeah. Also, yes, and the email is mmathinktank@gmail.com, guys. So email us. Let us know. Let's get into some fight picks, man. Let's go ahead and get into that.
We pick 'em.
This is the first time in a while that we haven't had a card that or an event that just ended. So because of that, we're actually going to have 3 events going on before our next podcast. Fight Night 87, UFC Fight Night 87, UFC 198, and Bellator 154. Next week is Fight Night UFC Fight Night 87. It's on a Sunday, so it's going to be early because it's going to be in the Netherlands. And Alistair Overeem is going to hold court there, fighting Andrei Arlovsky in the main event. 2 other fairly big fights. One just big because they're big. One actually is a really good fight. Bigfoot Silva is fighting Stefan Struve, 2 of the biggest guys in the heavyweight division, or in all in MMA. They're fighting. Gunnar Nelson versus Albert Tumanov, both some really good young up-and-coming guys. So those are the 3 guys at Fight Night 87. Yeah. Jay, you want to kick it off with the picks?
Yeah, Overeem versus Arlovsky. With how good Overeem has looked lately, I'm going Overeem here. And Arlovsky's looked decent too, but I think Overeem's just he's got something lately, and I think he's going to win this one.
I agree with that, and I think even though both of them have had some suspect chins as of late, I think Arlovsky still can't take the punch as well as Overeem, and Overeem is still just such a big guy. I'm going to go with Overeem. I'm going to pretty much just piggyback off your pick on that as well.
Yeah, and I think he's going to either TKO him or KO him.
Do you think, though, that Arlovsky's speed maybe and technical side of just straight-up boxing will give him some trouble? Maybe I think I might give him some trouble in the beginning, so I'm thinking I'm picking Overeem by KO in the second.
That's what I'm thinking. I was going to say the second round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's just moving on, I guess, then, so it's not too much to talk about here. Bigfoot Silva versus Stefan Struve. I put my hands in the air. I don't know.
I pick Bigfoot. I say Bigfoot KOs him. Stefan Struve's chin's not that good, and he just hasn't looked good at all. Not that Bigfoot's look great. He doesn't use his
length either.
Yeah, he's a tall guy that doesn't know how to use his length for sure. We've said that time and time again on this podcast, and it seemed like there was a lot of hubbub about him going and learning how to use his length and stuff, and training how to fight tall, and he never did.
Ernesto Hoost, another Dutch guy, just like he's Dutch, was going to train him. Champion kickboxer and everything, and it didn't work out. Nope. I'm just going to go with Bigfoot too because he's the bigger, stronger guy, and what we just discussed about Struve, not all that stuff. Something I find is interesting, the Gunnar Nelson versus Albert Tumanov. Here's something, Jay, I didn't tell you because I totally forgot about it until I read the name Albert Tumanov. Our good buddy Bert played poker with Tumanov, or was there in the room when he played poker in Vegas. He was in Vegas, and Bert said the guy was kind of a douche. So I guess he is kind of full of himself. I don't know. But
You heard that here first on the MMA Think Tank podcast. Tumanov, douche.
Our correspondent, Bert, good friend of ours, let me know that. He told me that, a couple of weeks ago. But because he emailed or he texted me, he goes, "Do you know who Albert Tumanov is?" And I texted him back. I said, "Yeah, it's a UFC fighter, I'm pretty sure, but I don't know how good he is, but I think he's at least all right because I know his name." He goes, and that's the story I just told you unfolded. But anyway,
he beat Lorenz Larkin last.
Well, that's actually a pretty good fight there. Beating Lorenz Larkin. Then that's a decent name. But I think I might go with Gunnar Nelson though, because Gunnar Nelson's 14-2-1, 10 subs. He's one of those guys that's kind of a BJJ savant. He lost to Damian Maia, but look, that's like student losing to teacher, really, when it comes to that. Yeah. It's got 3 TKOs and 5-2 in the UFC, so he's fairly well-rounded. Not to say that Tumanov isn't. He's 17-2, 11 TKOs. No submissions, though.
5-win streak, though.
Yeah, 5-1 has only lost, I think got all his wins since his first loss in the UFC. So I think Gunnar's going to be able to use that submission game to beat him. I'm
going Gunnar as well. I think Gunnar's going to submit him in probably second round.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll just go third because Tumanov seems to be a bad dude, seems to be a really tough guy. But we'll certainly see where both these guys are at the end of this fight. And if Tumanov beats Gunnar Nelson, then for me, he's truly legit. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've got UFC 198 to pick from, Mike.
Yeah, so not this weekend coming up, but the next weekend, we've got 2 cards, UFC 198, Bellator 154. They're both on Saturday. So Bellator, again, will not be on Friday. It'll be on Saturday with UFC 198. Huge card for UFC 198. It's the Brazilian card. Everybody not named, I think, Jose Aldo is on this card if you're Brazilian. At least if you're a male, I should say. Obviously, Claudia Gadelha is going to be on the tough finale. But we've got Fabricio Verdum defending his heavyweight title against Stipe Miocic. Anderson Silva's fighting Uriah Hall. The only Brazilian-on-Brazilian fight is Jacare Souza versus Vitor Belfort. Shogun Rua versus Corey Anderson. And there's a really good prelim on there as well. Matt Brown versus Damian Maia. Fantastic card. I'm really looking forward to it. I'll just start off this time, Jay, if you don't mind. Fabricio Verdum versus Stipe Miocic. I want to pick Stipe. I love Fabricio. I think he's a great guy too, but I think Fabricio has just come into his own, and it's just too well-rounded. Yeah,
I want to pick Stipe as well, but I thought the same thing this morning. I think that Verdum is going to take that fight. Hopefully he doesn't, though. I hope Miocic actually wins because I really want to see this guy take off in the UFC.
He's got the striking tools, man. You know, he's got the knockouts. He's young. He's a good poster boy for the sport. Not that Verdum
He'd be a great champ. Great champ.
It's just that Verdum doesn't really have that pop right now. You know, he's goofy, he's fun.
Yeah.
But, you know, he wins through jiu-jitsu most of the time, which shouldn't be a knock on him. But, look, people love seeing knockouts.
And the thing is Trollface doesn't win any popularity contests or promote fights very well.
Yeah.
The Trollface is great. It's funny, but you got to do more to promote your fights, man. And I'm not saying he does that to promote his fights, but that's the one thing he's like known for.
Yeah, he's he's respectful. At press conferences, about his opponents and stuff like that. He has said some crazy things in the past just to get under some people's skin. But like he said, he doesn't really do much for it. So I'll go ahead and move on then. And once we get closer, obviously we'll pick these fights and talk about what's next for them.
Yep.
But Anderson Silva versus Uriah Hall. A stat that, when I was looking up Uriah Hall, even though I know him fairly well, obviously he's
I already know my
stuff.
pick here.
What's that?
I already know who I'm picking on this one.
We know him from Tough and everything. He's 5-4 in the UFC, and he's 12-6 overall, 8 KOs, 2 submissions. I'm picking Anderson. Are you picking Anderson or are you picking?
I'm picking Uriah.
Okay, I'm picking Anderson. The reason I'm picking Anderson is because I think he's due after the crazy fight he had with Bisping, but then also that loss to Whitaker from Uriah Hall pushed him back, in my opinion.
Yeah, Whitaker is the real deal, though.
Oh, he's legit. He's legit up and coming for sure.
Here's the thing about Anderson. Anderson he's becoming irrelevant as well. He's going down the same path as Anthony Pettis. The only difference is you've got one fighter who's still young and the other fighter who's old and on his way out anyway.
And one didn't have PEDs, whereas Anderson did.
Yeah. But Uriah Hall, I think he's got the power in his kicks and his punches to knock out Anderson. Now, I'm not saying he's going to knock him out, but it's very possible. Don't sleep on that, okay? He could possibly knock him out. I think it'll probably go to decision, though, and I think Uriah is going to beat him. Why? Because Anderson Silva plays jazz hands too much.
I was going to bring that up. Is there going to be a two different voting scenarios, jazz hands or not, on the for betting? Because that's going to be a difference.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a dance recital, Anderson. Stop playing jazz hands.
Yeah, well, we'll see, man. I like what you said about are they becoming irrelevant? I think if Anderson Silva loses to Uriah Hall, I think he's irrelevant. I'll say that if he loses to Uriah Hall, no, I don't really make it sound bad for Uriah Hall. It's just that he lost 2 times. Anderson Silva lost 2 times to Chris Weidman, and then he did beat Nick Diaz, but he had that PED problem with that, and then he did fight stupidly, in my opinion, against Michael Bisping, though he almost won that fight in the second round. So I'm still going to lean towards Anderson Silva on this one, but I am solely in your camp if he can't get past Uriah Hall.
Yeah, and the funny thing is Uriah Hall, the guy lost to Robert Whitaker, but he won against Gegard Mousasi, which is huge. Bambosh was the guy he fought before that, which he's a decent fighter. I just don't see.
He's hot and cold, though, man. Hall's so hot and cold.
I know, but it's more of a mental thing with him, and I think that except for Whitaker, I think that fight with Whitaker was truly a good fight for both of them, and it went Whitaker's way.
I think that was a short notice fight too, wasn't it? Wasn't Whitaker supposed to fight Bisping and Bisping got hurt? I think Hall stepped in too.
It might have been. And all these losses against Uriah too were mostly by decision, and except for one. And if you go way back, this goes to 2010. He lost to Weidman.
Yep.
And it was TKO. That was the last time he was TKO'd.
Yeah, that was Ring of Combat.
So yeah, and it wasn't even the UFC. So my point being, I just don't see Anderson knocking out Uriah. And if it goes to a decision, I think Uriah's got more gas in the tank than Anderson Silva does nowadays, especially without the PEDs.
Yeah, well, here's the next fight. It's kind of similar to that. Shogun Rua versus Corey Anderson. Shogun Rua, end of his career, former Pride great, former UFC light heavyweight champ. Fighting Corey Anderson, who's 8-1 in the UFC, former tough winner. He's got 3 KOs. I don't know who to pick in this. Corey Anderson looks great, though. He's a big guy. I like him. Respectful guy. Good dude. I'm rooting for him. But Shogun is still that wily veteran that can still get it done, but he hasn't been getting it done as of late.
Yeah, I'm picking Corey because of that.
Yeah, so I think I'll go with Anderson in this one. I'm not sure who Shogun has, how much he has left. Matt Brown versus Damian Maia. Jay, this tells me with Matt Brown's past that he would probably lose this fight. Not that Damian Maia is a world beater quite yet, but he still is in the top 10 and has a really good, his submission game is really good. He's got one of the skills that he's fantastic at. So I'm going to pick Maia, but don't sleep on Brown. I guess if you're a betting guy and you see Brown at plus 300 or something, bet on Brown. Yeah, because Brown's a fantastic fighter. I'm
betting on Brown. I think Brown's going to get it done. I think it'll go to a decision, though. I don't think it's gonna. I don't think he knocks out Maia, and I don't think Maia catches them in a submission. I think this is a stalemate, sort of, and I think it stays on the feet more than anything. And I think that Matt Brown just damages him a lot on the feet.
That's a scenario that could happen. The other scenario, though, is he gets Matt Brown down. If he gets in Matt Brown's guard, if Maia gets on top of Brown,
that's scary too. That's scary too. But
is it over?
No,
it is.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't know, because you've got a submission ace in Damian Maia. You know, one of the best.
Time willing. If they're half the rounds over, I think Maia can get the mount and finish it. But if it's by submission, but that's it by ground and pound.
Yeah,
because Matt Brown can take a hell of a lot of punishment. Sorry,
okay. I thought when you said if he's in Matt Brown's guard, is it over? As in, does Matt Brown finish him? And I was trying to say no, because Damian Maia is such a submission ace. But
yeah, Maia's on top. He's in his guard. He's in Matt Brown's guard.
Yeah. Well, I still don't think he finishes it from there, because, as you know, Matt Brown off of his back fights hard. Yeah. The guy doesn't just lay there. The guy he tries to pull for submissions. He's got those long legs, which is dangerous against anyone.
That's why I said he wasn't going to pound him out. Maia wouldn't pound him out from the top, but he might be able to move to a submission.
It could be, but I don't think it's going that way. I think this is going to be a decision win for Matt Brown.
Most exciting fight on the card, Jay? I think it could be.
No, I think Stipe and Fabricio will be the most exciting fight in the card. Because of the way they both fight. I think if it stands, it's great. If it goes to the ground, it's great. Yeah,
shoot. I certainly, that was the other one I was thinking of. Although
you missed another one.
Yeah, I love Matt Brown and Damian Maia. That whole thing of what's going to happen, what could happen. But yeah, I skipped over Jacare and Vitor Belfort.
And what a fight that's going to be.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Vitor Belfort, but he's kind of a cheater, so I'm slightly less of a fan of his. And Jacare Souza's done nothing but win except for his last fight, which he should have won by decision.
Yes, he won that fight.
So I think Souza's got it. I think, look.
I do too. I think so.
We've seen Vitor stand with guys and look great. When he hits the ground, though, it's night-night.
Yeah.
And that's what Souza does. He gets you down and finishes you. So I'm going Souza on that.
Yep.
But I think it could be a good fight.
Yeah, I'm going Souza too. I don't know if he'll finish it, though. I can't call that, because Vitor's a tough guy. Unless if he finishes it, it'll be a submission of some sort.
Oh no, he'll finish it by submission if Souza wins. And I mean, that's what I think. I'm going to call a submission actually in the third.
Okay, that's
I won't
good.
be surprised if it's quicker, though, because when Weidman got Beachport down, he just demolished him with ground and pound.
Yeah.
I know it's a different fighter. You can't do MMA math and all that stuff, but it just shows who, when someone is in a certain position, how they act. And I think if Jacare can get him down, he doesn't have much off his back. Vitor Belfort doesn't. So I hesitate. I'm always hesitant to bring up a round one stoppage.
Yeah.
But I also say round three, Jacare by submission.
I'll say if Jacare gets on top of Vitor, even in the first, Jacare's a scary man.
Yeah.
Anything can happen. But I'm not calling the first round here. I probably won't be calling first rounds for quite some time after last week.
Well, let's go ahead and move on to our final card. That day also is Bellator 154. And, it's funny. There's only 3 fights listed currently. And this is happening in 2 weeks, people. But really, there's only 2 fights right now that are worth discussion for the podcast.
Great
and that is
fights.
Phil Davis versus King Mo and Michael Chandler versus Josh Thompson.
Great fights.
Yeah, and Phil Davis versus King Mo is really what we should have had in the light heavyweight Grand Prix a couple months ago, but King Mo had a hurt rib. Davis 14-3, won no contest with 5 subs, 3 TKOs. He's 2-0 on Bellator because of that Grand Prix. He hasn't fought since because Liam McGeary got hurt because he was supposed to fight Liam McGeary. McGeary got hurt. King Mo 19-4, won no contest, 13 KO TKOs, no subs, 8-3 in Bellator. But remember, he did win that Risen heavyweight Grand Prix. Which, look, I'm not saying like it's a great, it's a feather in his cap, but he has 3 more wins in Risen, and he won that Grand Prix. I'm going Phil Davis hands down, Jay.
Yeah, me
I don't
too.
think King Mo is a fighter he was. I think Davis still has some life in him and some road still to run in his career, and that's why.
Yeah, I think King Mo's still a decent fighter, but Phil Davis is definitely he's on the come up, at least for Bellator. I think Phil Davis, like you said, he's still got gas in the tank. The guy's still a dangerous opponent. I say he beats King Mo, probably even TKO. Maybe
Really, you think he gets on top of him and pounds him out, or
hurts him, jumps on him, or maybe even just takes him down and TKOs him. Maybe
I
end of
looked
second.
At Mo's stats with subs, how much he's been subbed or not. I can't think of a time he's been subbed unless it was against.
Well, we know that
to Cavalcante, but
we know that King Mo likes to stand.
Yeah,
and Phil Davis is a great wrestler.
Well, I bring it up because I think if he loses, I think he's going to lose by submission to Davis. But
but if Davis
he's so strong with the arm locks, like with the Kimuras.
But if he takes him down, and let's say he gets the mount, I mean, he'll want to punch King Mo.
Yeah, he does have the length, doesn't he? He's got those crazy trapezoids.
I'm calling it by end of second round, late second round.
Yeah, I'm still going to go decision, but I certainly don't think you're way off or anything. I will say this, and I don't think I'm way off. I don't think anybody beats Phil Davis in that division in Bellator.
No, I don't either. I don't either.
To be quite honest,
he
already beat Emmanuel Newton, and he beat, I believe, Linton Vassell. I could be wrong, but
Vassell, he's beat them all. He doesn't lose in that division.
So let's move on to the last fight. A fight I've been looking forward to that, man, people, as soon as Josh Thompson was signed to Bellator, people were calling this fight out, Josh Thompson versus Michael Chandler.
Yep.
I'm excited for this fight. I like both guys, Jay.
I like Josh Thompson a bit more. I'm going for Josh Thompson.
I do. Sorry, Jay, go ahead.
I think it's going to be a decision. It's I don't think one is going to knock out the other. Right? These guys both like to stand and bang too. It's going to be Josh Thompson.
And we've seen that Chandler, like, when he fought Alvarez, he can be susceptible to subs. Not a whole bunch. It's not like an Achilles heel of his. But Thompson's really good on the ground, really good grappler.
He's good on the feet. He's real good. He's real good on the feet. We saw that against Melendez.
Feet, but I think he's even better on the ground. So he seems to be more well-rounded. I guess it comes down to me, which is Thompson has had his time. I'd like to see Michael Chandler continue to do well and move to the UFC, but I don't think he's moving to the UFC. I may as well go with my boy Josh.
Yeah, because I was just going to tell you, don't go with your heart. Don't always go with your heart, man. Think about the fight game. I think Josh is just a better all-around fighter.
Yeah, and he hasn't fought anybody that great in Bellator yet. I think he fought Mike Bronzoulis, and man, I was at the fight live in his last fight, and I forgot what that guy's name was that he fought. That'll tell you something.
Yeah, but
Michael Chandler's a big step up right here.
Yeah, what I'm excited about is I'm actually more excited for this fight than I was Ben Henderson against Koreshkov, just because. Sure, we saw Koreshkov do his thing, but I didn't know he was as good as he was, so I wasn't as excited for the fight. Right. But this, I know Michael Chandler's good, and I know Josh Thompson's good. It's going to be it's going to be exciting. I can't wait to watch it.
That's why Twitter was blowing up for both those fighters and for Scott Coker, President Scott Coker. I'm excited to see it too. It's in San Jose.
Ooh.
I want to go to that fight.
How much are tickets?
I will or not.
Pretty expensive.
It's not expensive. Bellator is not expensive. But I don't know, man. It's just the fight card on its own is not great so far. These two fights are phenomenal. Don't get me
Yeah,
wrong.
those two, I would go see it for those two alone.
But I've spent a little bit too much money lately, and I could afford to go if I wanted to. But I like to have a happy wife, and we'll see what happens. She's been very great in my MMA.
Well,
Dealing with MMA and stuff. She's never turned me down when I really wanted to see a fight, and she's great that way. But you also want to make sure that,
Yeah, I've also had some coworkers that have been wanting to go to a fight card, and I've been telling them, well, next time they come to San Jose or Sacramento or something, we'll go watch it. So that may be a good one there. Who knows?
I will tell you this, though. If you want to go, and your lovely wife wants to go,
we could make it a foursome, huh?
We could probably go. But it's going to be up to the young ladies in our lives,
Yeah,
probably.
Exactly. Well,
but that's neither here nor there.
But that's the great thing about being married to a couple of wives that, actually like MMA to a certain degree,
And like each other.
Yeah.
Because they can hang out and talk about other stuff.
Exactly. They can talk crazy stuff.
Fighter of the month.
All right, Mike, let's get down to our Fighter of the Month pick. I know I've got mine in my head. You've got yours in yours. We haven't told each other who our Fighter of the Month is yet. So go ahead. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody who your
I'll give you the rundown as I always do. John Fitch finally got that belt, got a top-tier promotion belt, but it wasn't him. Andrei Koreshkov beat Benson Henderson, former UFC champ. Really just looked great in that fight, but he wasn't my Fighter of the Month. Rose Namajunas beats undefeated Tisha Torres, avenges her loss, is looking fantastic on her way to the title. She is not my Fighter of the Month. Fighter of the Month for April is Demetrius Johnson, because he beat the last contender in his division, in my opinion. Beat him at his own game and in 2 minutes. He is unbeatable, people. I just don't see what happens next with this guy. So that's what I'm going to say.
Yep. And I echo your thoughts and what you said. He is my Fighter of the Month as well. Demetrius Johnson, how could he not be on anybody's list here for this month? He is the Fighter of the Month for the month of April because he is pound for pound the best there is in this game. I know you don't agree, Mike, and that's fine. But
that's close. Hey, we're close though. Don't worry about it.
But this guy is just an amazing fighter to watch. Like you said, he beat the last guy in his division that was really the one last guy we thought was going to give him issues, and it didn't happen. Demetrius Johnson passed that test with flying colors. So, so I guess he's our Fighter of the Month for April.
And I think it's only the second time that we've agreed on the Fighter of the Month. So sometimes we're a little different. This time we're spot on.
Yeah, we couldn't deny it. Anyway, Mike, we've come to the end of the program, so we must go. But before we do, I'm going to go ahead and tell people to go ahead and email us at mmathinktank@gmail.com, and also to check out the Facebook page that Mike's always working hard on at MMA Think Tank Podcast, and as well as our YouTube page. You can check out our podcasts there. Sometimes I throw up little news bits there. Mike sometimes throws me stuff, and I may just make a quick podcast, even if it's from work I've done before on my phone. So audio quality is not very good sometimes, but hey, I'm going to throw it up there if something comes along. It's a quick way to do it. But yeah, our podcasts are there. Check us out on iTunes, Stitcher, all that stuff.
Yeah, check out the Facebook, but I do have a lot of my writings also on gmbsports.com. That is just a regular sports site. So they have stuff other than mixed martial arts there. They got football, baseball, hockey, everything. I'm writing there, so check that place out as well. And we welcome your feedback on the show, Jay. What do you think?
Definitely. So until next time, guys.
Have a great one.
We go.